Hey guys, just checking in post-nationals. It was such a wild weekend. The single speed race for me and then the elite race on Sunday. I thought it'd be cool to do a little race recap and kind of talk you guys through both races and how wild they were. Okay, so the single speed race was on Saturday at 3:25 in the afternoon. What was happening was super cold overnight, so the ground was freezing, and then throughout the day, the sun was just thawing the top layer off, and so it was getting pretty slippery. But it was constantly changing throughout the day, which made gear choice a little interesting. I didn't know what to do because I didn't want it to get heavy and then be over geared. Anyway, I ended up choosing a 4218. It seemed like that's what most people were on, a similar gear. We lined up for a pretty stacked start of the single speed race. The previous year's podium was on the line, and then it was myself and Tobin. Casey Hildebrandt was there, a bunch of other faster guys. I've never really done a super high level single speed race before. I've done some local stuff to test out gear and whatnot, so it was really comical off the start how, you know, everybody got to the top end of that gear and then we kind of just stayed there. So there was this massive jockeying for position right there at the first corner through the first two corners really. Tobin got to the front right away and started pushing the pace. A group of us just fell in line behind him, but on that first lap, that's kind of where the main kind of gaps were made. Tobin kept pushing the pace the whole first lap. I was able to stay with him, and then the guys behind us fell off a bit. So basically from the end of lap 1, there were only 4 laps total. So for the next 3 laps, it was just Tobin and I. Again, with us being on similar gears, it was like, you know, there was no way to really attack. You could get on top of a gear, but then, you know, you'd just be like stuck pedaling out there. It was really, we were both just being patient, kind of hoping the other one would make a mistake. We were constantly taking lines over top of each other and underneath each other, but we couldn't create any separation. So it all came down to the last lap. Tobin and I came into it together.
One to go, one to go, one to go, one to go.
One to go, one to go.
I wanted to lead into the off camber, so I got out in front, managed to lead through the off camber, but then he came back around me at pit 2. I took an outside line in a U-turn, he took an inside line, and then we had this epic little battle for the next corner where we were like shoulder to shoulder, bumping elbows. We came into then that running section at the back of the pro parking lot. We both ran through there, and from there to the finish line, it was maybe only 4 minutes total, so I knew I really wanted to be in front for the last kind of couple corners. I knew it would be really hard to come around, so pedaling down this kind of faster section on the back straight into the dip before the stairs. I saw Tobin swing wide, so I dropped into the dip on the inside and got the pass, pushed up over the Belgian stairs, and then I knew that I was in front. This was the goal. I just had to keep the hammer down. We did this kind of heavier section with a slippery climb up to the gazebo, and I could see him coming in my peripheral, but I had the inside line, so I was able to nudge him out, and then from there it was just like head down, drill it to the finish. There was a big muddy bog into the final section, so we were both running it every lap. I got off my bike and pulled a Usain Bolt move, sprinted to the last off-camber section. This is where the race really got solidified. I stayed high. Tobin thought he would kind of roll the dice and go around me by taking the low line. What he didn't realize was the low line was actually longer, and so when we came out of that feature, I immediately had a 3-second gap on him. And from there to the finish line, it was maybe 200 meters. So yeah, just got on top of the pedals and then kind of sprinted toward the line. Came across the line with the win, and I was stoked, though you couldn't tell because I was so gassed that I forgot to post up. I knew it wasn't going to be easy to do well or win the single speed race, but I didn't expect it being quite that hard. On the bright side, it was only a 35-minute race. Tobin and I kept telling ourselves after the finish that we were going to be super opened up for Sunday. Sunday morning came and the weather forecast was looking like snow. I was pretty pumped. I did go out to pre-ride though, and some of the UCI only sections were still grass and still rideable. I was feeling really good on them. taking good lines, and then even throughout the entire women's race, the women were riding kind of the big main off-camber feature. The snow started coming down in the middle of their race, and then it really started coming down when we were on the line. This basically changed everything. I started on baby limaces, which in hindsight maybe wasn't the best idea, but I hadn't really got any good course intel except from the women's race, and they were saying like, yeah, it's still slick, but you know, like I said, they were still riding the off-camber. So when the whole front row was on limaces, I had to make a call to Spencer and tell him to put the limaces on the pit bike. Got off the line pretty good. I was sitting decent wheel, you know, like 5 back or so, and we hit those first 2 corners by the pits, and I started losing a little bit of space. I did my best to kind of stay on top of it, but I knew I needed a bit more aggressive tread. The baby limas was just packing up a little too much, and I needed something more for some more bite. Lance was leading, Curtis and Brunner were up there, Scott Funkston was up there, and I came through the off-camber on the first lap in like 6th place or so. I had no idea the off-camber was as slippery as it is. It was insane. I thought maybe I would ride it, but I saw everybody in front of me getting off, and so I'm glad I did, because if I would have tried to nose around that corner, it just would have been like immediately down and probably slid under the fence. That was like the real big kind of, that's where all the gaps happened every lap. This off-camber was the highlight feature. So if you could navigate this cleanly and smoothly, you could probably get a couple seconds on somebody, no problem. And then the rest of the race, you know, there was a couple slick corners here and there, but that was like where the moves were happening on the off-camber. I never could quite figure it out. I only had mediums toe spikes in. Maybe some bigger ones would have been better, but I mean, I don't know if a couple more millimeters of toe spike would have made it that much better for me. Regardless, I was really finding it tough to like get up to the front of the race on those first couple laps. Curtis and Brunner and Funkston were up there pushing the pace, and I really wanted to be up there, but I just like could not do it. And they were only, you know, 5-10 seconds up on those first 2 laps. I lost some ground at the end of that first lap and really got gapped by Curtis, Brunner, Funkston, and Brennan. I knew that was maybe the end of my podium push, but I also knew that like mistakes were so easy to make, especially on that off camber, and just making up a couple seconds here and there would be huge. So I just kept the hammer down. Lance and Caleb and I linked up for like 2 or 3 laps there right at the beginning of the race, and then I was able to get away from those guys. And once I got away from them, I had my sights set directly on Funkston. I'd seen that he had gotten kind of popped from Curtis and Brunner, so I just like kept the power down. Coming into 2 laps to go, I could really see Funkston starting to fade, so I locked in on that and made contact right at the end of 2 laps to go, coming into 1 lap to go. And that's where we kind of started riding together for the first time. We even got a little close, made a little contact. And that was when I passed him, and from that point on, I never looked back. Once I passed him, I really wanted to be the first into the off-camber to manage any mistakes. I made it through the off-camber section and looked back and had a gap, pretty big gap. So I just put my head down and finished out the final lap. You know, I could hear the announcer talking about the battle between Curtis and Brunner, and then I could look over on the back section and see it going down. So pretty cool to see Curtis win his first national championship. Obviously, I would have rather been the person to do it. Regardless, it was such a sick race. The crowd was awesome. The course was amazing. I loved the course. It was so hard, so demanding in so many ways. I'm still sore. But yeah, that's how my weekend went down. 2 medals, 2 races, and now I'm kind of in off-season mode. I'm not heading over to Europe this year. Gonna wind it down so I can get ready for some of the more early season gravel stuff. If you guys have any questions about my race or whatever, shoot me a message. But next time I see you guys, it'll be 2023. So Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.